This is Martin Green in his Framework Knitters Workshop. It's much like many of the workshops which once existed all over the East Midlands in the 18th and 19th centuries. These huge knitting frames require the knitter to use both hands and both feet and are entirely manually operated. The first stocking frames were somewhat smaller than the ones you see here and were invented in 1589 by this gentleman, William Lee of Calverton in Nottinghamshire. Knitting is a complicated business compared with weaving, and so it was a long time before a machine could be invented to do the job without dropping all the stitches. The secret was the bearded needle, this needle with a hook on the end, to catch the new stitch and hold it safe while the old stitch passes over the top and off the end of the needle. Let's take a look at what's happening. Here you can see the thread carrier bringing the new length of yarn across the shafts of the needles. Behind it, the jack sinkers come down between alternate needles, forming loops which will become the new row of stitches. Now the second set of sinkers have come down, forming a loop over every needle shaft. The sinkers will now push the new row of stitches forward into the beards of the needles. Next, the presser bar will come down to close the beard so that the old row of stitches can be pushed safely off the end of the needle. And now the sinkers come down in front of the knitting and pull it back to the top of the needle shafts so that the whole process can begin again.
Draws the stitch between the needles, and then you press, and obviously I press down with the left treadle for that, and then you press down with the left foot to divide the loop, pull it underneath the beard of the needle, let go of it, shut the beard with the presser bar, the middle treadle, pull the loop onto the nib of the beard, release the presser bar, the middle treadle, and then pull the stitch over the top of the needle, over the arch and back to the starting position. These are the...
That's one set of sinkers going down.
They're the jack sinkers that have come down and pulled a large loop between every other needle, and then you press down with your left foot on the sinking pedal and divide those stitches between all the needles, and then pull that divided stitch under the beard, let go of it, shut the beard, pull the stitch over the top. And when you put the whole thing together like that, they call it meeting the presser. And when you first start, you can't meet the pressure, you do everything really in slow motion and then gradually build up your speed, and when you can do it as one continuous motion they refer to it as meeting the presser. The person that showed me really most of how to work these machines was a chap called Jeff Oxley at Hertz of Chilwell, and he didn't used to divide, and I don't. And so what I've just shown you isn't actually what I normally do. I pull the stitch, I don't actually divide, I just rest the dividers on the top of that large loop, pull it underneath, shut the beard, and then as I pull it forward it divides just there. And that's, so because I don't divide, it actually saves a split second. Every second counts.
this particular machine, Martin has a second row of needles which interact with the piece of work to form the lacy pattern that you see here. Martin doesn't make his own needles, but each pair of needles has to be set into a piece of lead, as you see here. This is in order to fit it onto the machine. And these pieces of lead are cast by Martin himself in special moulds, which he's showing us here.
The machine number H4 and the gauge 34 gauge. And if you open that up, you can see there's a, by tradition they always left one in there, and you can see it's got the tail on, it hasn't been chopped off with a pair of pliers, the two needles in there. Yeah. We call it the needle mould, but it actually makes the lead that goes on the end of the needle.
In his workshop, Martin also has several circular knitting machines. Known as Griswolds, they were invented in the 19th century and are used for knitting socks. Framework knitting was once one of the most important industries of the East Midlands, but it died out in the mid-19th century for various reasons, not least of which was the invention of steam-powered knitting machines, which gave rise to huge hosiery factories such as Cora's of Leicester. Today, Martin is one of the few people left who can operate the frame, keeping alive a tradition which started with William Lee in Nottinghamshire over 400 years ago.